Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this incredibly eventful day, June 16, 2026, and see how these seemingly isolated global events are actually deeply interconnected. Look, we are witnessing a day of massive ripple effects. Decisions being made in the Persian Gulf are quite literally echoing all the way to Silicon Valley and right onto the White House South Lawn. It's a lot to cover, so let's get into it. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to kick things off with geopolitics and global security, check in on markets and the Hormuz reopening, unpack the ongoing Anthropic AI standoff, hit some major domestic sports and culture moments, and then wrap things up with a critical national weather watch. Starting us off, Section 1, Geopolitics and Global Security. So, that tense 15-week U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports? The ceasefire has been officially extended. Officials are actively preparing to sign a formal U.S.-Iran peace framework this coming Friday. But, that signature is really just the starting gun. It immediately triggers a hyper-compressed 60-day window for critical nuclear negotiations to address Tehran's weapons program. And proliferation experts are deeply concerned right now because securing major structural concessions in just 2 months, that is an exceptionally short and challenging diplomatic sprint. Now, as we enter that critical 60-day window, we've got a massive, glaring blind spot. Intelligence officials are absolutely sounding the alarm because the FISA Section 702 surveillance authority has officially lapsed. To put into perspective just how big of a deal this is, that lapsed program previously accounted for over 60% of the president's daily briefing. That means 60% of that vital daily intelligence is currently just missing, right while Congress is on recess. It's raising some very deep concerns about our tracking capabilities during such a sensitive diplomatic period. Meanwhile, across the pond at the 52nd G7 summit in France, where President Trump is holding working sessions on Ukraine and global AI governance, the European Union is making sure its voice is heard. Representing the EU, President Ursula von der Leyen has drawn a very firm line here. She is insisting that any future sanctions relief for Tehran absolutely must be strictly tied to credible and verifiable behavioral changes. And to add another layer of complexity to this broader U.S.-Iran peace framework, the reality on the ground in the Middle East remains incredibly complicated. Israel's defense posture hasn't changed. Defense Minister Israel Katz has made it clear that Israel will not withdraw from occupied security buffer zones in Lebanon, Syria, or Gaza. With border skirmishes still happening, Israel is maintaining its firm stance and its right to act independently against Iranian targets. So localized ceasefire terms, they remain entirely unresolved. Moving right along to Section 2, Markets and the Hormuz reopening. So, what does all this international diplomacy actually mean for the global economy? Well, the maritime shipping industry definitely isn't waiting around. They are actively prepping for Friday's expected reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, with commercial vessels already moving into position near the waterway. Because of this impending end to the 15-week closure, we're finally seeing global commodity markets stabilize. Global crude oil prices are retreating rapidly, and those severe inflationary energy cost pressures, the ones that spiked during the blockade and impact the cost of pretty much everything we buy, they are finally beginning to ease up. All right, shifting gears entirely to Section 3, the Anthropic AI standoff. Now, this is where things get really fascinating. We've got an intense he-said, she-said dispute happening right here at home. We are literally on day 6 of a global blackout for Anthropic's flagship Fable 5 and Mythos 5 AI models. On one side of the ring, you have the Commerce Department and the White House. They're warning of severe jailbreak risks and the threat of these models being diverted to foreign military intelligence. But on the other side, Anthropic is strongly pushing back. They insist these vulnerabilities are just standard across the industry, and they're quick to point out they already had prior deployment approval. This is a massive deal because it's effectively freezing access to one of the most advanced tech tools used by businesses around the world. So how do you break an unprecedented deadlock like this? Well, Anthropic's senior technical staff are essentially running a high-stakes bureaucratic marathon this week. After an initial Monday session at the Commerce Department failed to resolve the export control dispute, they are rapidly pivoting. They're heading straight over to the CIA for briefings and then going face-to-face with White House Science Advisor Michael Kratsios. They're urgently trying to navigate the federal government to get their primary revenue-generating systems back online. And man, the external pressure cooker is just building from all sides here. You've got a coalition of cybersecurity leaders actually urging the administration to reverse these export controls, arguing that sidelining our domestic AI models hurts national cyber defense while foreign competitors just operate freely. Then there's the intense scrutiny on Amazon CEO Andy Jassy's private call to the Treasury Secretary just hours before the directive even dropped. The narrative is a total battleground. Anthropic is strongly refuting White House claims that CEO Dario Amodei declined a request to voluntarily patch or pull the model. Ultimately, financial analysts are waving a huge red flag. They're warning that this prolonged blackout, combined with a previous Pentagon blacklist placement, is forcing massive material risk disclosures that could severely tank Anthropic's confidential pre-IPO valuation. Okay, let's take a quick breather and jump into Section 4, Domestic Sports and Culture. Because it is definitely not all heavy geopolitics today. We have some truly historic cultural moments unfolding. First up, New York City is gearing up for massive Manhattan parades because, yes, the Knicks finally broke a 53-year championship drought. They clinched their first NBA title since 1973 after Jalen Brunson put up an absolutely dominant 45-point performance on Saturday. Meanwhile, the newly expanded 48-team FIFA World Cup is in full swing, with group stage matches advancing all across the US, Canada, and Mexico. And you know we have to mention, the entertainment world is still buzzing about Sunday's UFC Freedom 250. In a wildly unprecedented move, they staged a commercial combat sports property directly on the White House South Lawn to mark President Trump's 80th birthday. It drew a massive audience across CBS and Paramount+, just a completely unique piece of sports history. Finally, let's wrap things up with Section 5, National Weather Watch. Pivoting to something really crucial for public safety, a very dangerous heat dome has an absolute grip on the southern United States and the Southwest today. We're looking at a relentless high-pressure ridge that is trapping hazardous temperatures, and the National Weather Service has active heat advisories across major metropolitan regions. These heat indices are expected to remain hazardous straight through midweek. So if you live in these areas, please strongly consider limiting any strenuous outdoor activity during those peak hours, and definitely take a minute to check in on your vulnerable neighbors. So, what is the big takeaway here? We are living through a day where global peace treaties, totally unprecedented artificial intelligence blackouts, and record-breaking cultural events are all colliding at the exact same time. How will a highly compressed 60-day diplomatic sprint for nuclear limits, combined with this unresolved multi-agency government grip on top-tier AI, reshape our world by the end of the year? It's a massive, massive question. But these concurrent geopolitical and technological shockwaves are absolutely guaranteed to define the months ahead. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this explainer today. Stay curious, stay focused, and I'll catch you in the next one.